When we think of Jesus, we think of someone who is great. We think of the art, and we think of beautiful hair and rich robes, and a distance, and maybe even on a throne. But then when you read through the Gospel of Mark, you come across a theme in the life of Jesus that goes on, and it's a certain sense of humility and a certain sense of not wanting to be made a big thing. One time there was a person who was blind who came to Jesus and said, "Please, would you heal me?" And instead of doing it in public, Jesus took him by the arm and led him off away from the crowds. And there, in the quiet of just the two of them, he reached down, and this is what's fascinating, his healing was not necessarily just with words or with touch. He did it with spittle. He spit down on the ground, and he made some mud, and he smeared that on the eyes of the blind man. And then he laid hands on the man. Well, it's fascinating that then Jesus said, "What do you see?" And the man opened his eyes and he said, "My gosh," he says, "I see, but people are looking like trees." Well, Jesus reached out and he touched him again. And then the man was able to see ordinarily. Well, a fascinating little story. But the story speaks of a virtue that's not very popular today, and that's humility. We live in a world in which, oh boy, you've got to become the American hero. You've got to become the idol. You've got to become the most important. And Jesus has such a love for God and knows that God loves him, that he can be at peace with not having to have the adulation and praise of the rest of the world. May we listen to that Jesus and understand the complexity of who he is and come deeper and deeper in our own lives to the humility of Christ, and not having to do big shows, but making sure, founded on God's love for us, we can do good things, but we don't need to have the adulation of others in order to make them work.